The international world is shocked by the Wagner Group's entrance into the Sahel region by a private military contractor with ties to Russia, and is worried about how it may affect the already precarious security situation. Clued up in controversy and mystery, this mysterious organization purports to provide security services and training to counter terrorist groups and works in nations such as Mali, the Central African Republic, and Burkina Faso. In a turn of events, Wagner Group has been replaced by a new entity known as Russia's Africa Corps across its key strongholds in the continent. In today's video, we will tell you more about this new entity and why it was changed. We will also tell you some of the countries this new leadership will be keen to expand. Unlike a standard military contractor, the Wagner Group is opaque in its operations and is frequently accused of using unconventional methods. Its associations with President Putin's close ally Yevgeny Prigozhin and the Russian government contribute to its ambiguity. The founders of the renowned mercenary group, Dmitry Utkin and Yevgeny Prigozhin, lost their lives in an aircraft crash in August 2023, just 2 months after organizing Wagner fighters to march on Moscow to stage a coup against the nation's armed forces. Since the deaths of Prigozhin and Utkin, the future of Wagner's role on the continent has been shrouded in uncertainty. This is why the new leader of Russia's Africa Corps and Wagner veteran, Anton Yelizarov, said in a video last week that they will continue to work for the African continent and the good of Russia. He also said they were building a camp so that new units that would become part of the volunteer corps of the Russian National Guard could arrive and settle. Yelizarov added that what is now the Africa Corps has always defended and will continue defending the people of the Russian Federation and their interests. He said they were going to do this wherever they found themselves in the world. The Africa Corps publicly declared on Telegram in late January that it had deployed 100 personnel to Burkina Faso to aid current leader Ibrahim Traore in repelling Islamist insurgencies in the Sahel region. For a few months now, the new organization has been taking over activities in Mali and Libya, and there are talks in progress to build a Russian military facility in the Central African Republic. Analysts believe new units will likely be deployed across the Sahel states, the Central African Republic, and Libya, though contracts with local governments will dictate the scope of the group's activities. The Africa Corps is not a component of the Russian armed forces. Instead, it is made up of volunteers and mercenaries. It started hiring in December 2023 and has extended employment offers to former mercenaries of the Wagner Group. It might also hire locals. The creation of the Africa Corps, which will assume control of the Wagner Group's operations, under the guidance of the Russian Ministry of Defense, indicates that efforts are being made to restore order following the Wagner Group's destruction. Russian Deputy Defense Minister Yunus Yevgeny oversaw the creation of the Africa Corps, which is expected to be fully completed by this summer. The installation of a military base in the Central African Republic will serve to advance the idea that the 100 Africa Corps members who have arrived in Burkina Faso represent both an expansion and the formalization of the Kremlin's military presence in the Sahel region. Yevgeny made several trips to Africa before the Burkina deployment. Take note that Moscow reopened its embassy in Ouagadougou, which had been closed for more than 3 decades. Plans to reopen the embassy were revealed by Russian President Vladimir Putin during the July Russia-Africa Conference in St. Petersburg. The embassy was closed in 1992 as Moscow reduced its involvement in Africa following the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. We can see that Russia is continuing its efforts to fill the security vacuum opened up by the withdrawal of French troops from many of the country's former colonies in recent years. Russia is a major producer of wheat and other agricultural products, and its offer to export food to Africa could help to alleviate hunger and food insecurity on the continent. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, Africa imports nearly 25% of its wheat, and Russia is the world's largest exporter of wheat. President Vladimir Putin promised to give tens of thousands of tons of grain to African leaders in July despite Western sanctions, which he claimed made it more difficult for Moscow to sell its grain and fertilizers. A few commentators have raised worry that Russia may be using its food exports as a geopolitical weapon, given that the country is now at war with Ukraine. The Food and Agriculture Organization has warned that the war may result in a global food catastrophe as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has disrupted world food supplies. Russia quit a year-old agreement in July that had allowed Ukraine, one of the world's biggest exporters, to ship grain from its Black Sea ports. Some people believe that Russia is offering genuine assistance to Africa, while others believe that Russia is using food as a weapon. They say Russia's offer could have negative consequences for African farmers, as it could lead to lower prices for their products. Chad has relatively open borders with Central African Republic, Libya, and Sudan, where Russian mercenaries are also active, and officials from Africa, Europe, and the United States have warned that the Wagner Group is expanding into these countries. Wagner is alleged to have given material and operational support to local rebels attempting to destabilize and possibly overthrow the government of Chad's interim president, Mohamed Idriss Déby Itno. Will the African Corps now accept that they did this? Mohamed Déby's trip to Russia in January was the first official visit to Moscow by a Chadian leader in 56 years, and the second trip made by a leader of the landlocked Central African nation since it separated from France. The Kremlin meeting addressed the prospects for further developing Russian-Chadian relations in various fields, as well as regional and international issues. To be more specific, Russia intends to increase engagement and collaboration with African nations. Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin, stated that Chad was one of Russia's possible African partners, and that the country was committed to further growing its collaboration with African nations. While Captain Ibrahim Traore, the powerful head of the Burkina Faso military government, has opted to use the nation's resources to combat jihadism, conducting rigorous, occasionally coercive recruitment for the military and the contentious volunteers for the defense of the fatherland. He has also repeatedly acknowledged the necessity of receiving outside assistance, particularly in the form of military supplies. Similar to Goita, Traore spoke with Vladimir Putin on several occasions during the St. Petersburg summit and over the phone afterward, and military teams from Russia and Burkina Faso met several times in the past year. While aligning with military regimes in Africa hardly enhances Russia's power over the long term, it is certainly useful for unnerving countries, including the United States, France, and some of the Sahel's neighbors. The military governments that have taken control of many Sahelian nations in recent times regard Russia as a guardian in both the internal and external spheres, and they are eager to collaborate with it in matters of defense. The Africa Corps is largely there to increase the military, political, and economic influence of the Kremlin in the region, even though its declared goal is to aid in the battle against jihadism. Many analysts also think that the new government will be eager to expand into Niger, even though doing so would be difficult given that the nation is home to a sizable American drone base and was overthrown by a military government in July of last year. Given that Africa Corps was founded with a command structure akin to Wagner's, and that former Wagner commanders are participating, it is reasonable to expect that the kinds of actions the organization will engage in will bear a strong resemblance to Wagner's past. Based on what we already know about Russian brutality in both the Syrian conflict and the Ukrainian conflict, we can assume that a mercenary force acting under Russian influence will be even less interested in following national norms of behavior when carrying out its operations. Russia is known for breaking international law and for not caring about human rights conventions. For example, Russia was accused on February 25, 2022 by Amnesty International of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and waging war in violation of international law, indiscriminately attacking densely populated areas, and exposing civilians to unnecessary and disproportionate harm. Why is Wagner Group using a different name? Wagner Group faces international criticism for alleged human rights abuses and ties to the Russian government. Using a different name in the region might be an attempt to distance themselves from these associations. Africa Corps might also sound more palatable to African populations compared to the Wagner name, potentially facilitating operations and recruitment. The name Africa Corps is directly linked to the German unit that fought alongside fascist Italy in North Africa during World War II. This association with colonialism and a regime responsible for horrific atrocities is deeply offensive to many Africans and risks generating strong opposition and resentment towards the Wagner Group. The lack of clarity surrounding the reasons for the name change raises suspicion and fuels speculation about the Wagner Group's true motives. This opacity could further damage their credibility and trust in the region. Russia's Wagner Group's rebranding as the Africa Corps in the Sahel marks a concerning development, shrouded in more questions than answers. While the group claims a new chapter, the historical connotations and lack of transparency surrounding the move raise serious concerns. The rebranding represents a more significant level of Russian involvement in the Sahel, which might exacerbate already difficult international efforts and add to the region's complex power relations. This deeper involvement could worsen already existing tensions and obstruct efforts to achieve long-term peace. In the end, the rebranding of the Wagner Group is a clear reminder of the intricate security issues that the Sahel is facing. Although the group presents a potential countermeasure to Islamist threats, its opaque tactics give rise to ethical and geopolitical problems. Any positive role they may play in the future of the region depends on addressing these issues, maintaining transparency, and honoring local ownership. Do you think the change of name will have a positive impact in the Sahel and Africa as a whole? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the new tourist channel. Turn on notifications too so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.